Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you get more information and catch previous shows at our website, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on both positive news and information about people and organizations in both West North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Jackie Kiger, CEO at Pisgah Legal Services. And Jackie, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, that's Jackie. And Jackie, I should mention, is the Chief Operations Officer with Pisgah Legal Services. She joined the staff in 2010. So you were probably like, what, youngest person who ever joined Pisgah? You were like seven at the time or eight. Amazing. She joined as a public benefits and housing attorney, and in 2013 helped implement the organization's Affordable Care Act Health Justice Enrollment Program. In 2014, she was promoted to managing attorney to oversee their health justice, public benefits, and immigration work. Jackie has a master's in social work from UNC Chapel Hill and received a law degree from John Marshall Law School in Atlanta, Georgia. She and her family live in the mountains of West North Carolina, and she enjoys yoga, hiking, and spending time with her family. I'll say that in your spare time, that you have so much spare time to do all this stuff.
Exactly.
Jackie, as a child, you grew up where?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And when you were growing up as a child in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, did you always know you wanted to be an attorney?
Well, I think so, though. I also wanted to be on television, and my mom worked for public television. She actually worked for the television station that filmed Mr. Rogers'
Yes,
Neighborhood.
Mr. Rogers, right.
Yes,
So did you ever get to meet Mr. Rogers?
I did. I
Did
did.
you?
I was quite young, and so I don't think I actually remember it. I was about 3 years old, but she wasn't working there anymore. But she brought me down to meet him, and I have a picture, and it was a really special moment.
Okay. It's very cool. So now you're getting back. So now you're back on television, or not television, you're on video cast or podcast. So is your
Yeah.
mom still around?
Yes, she is.
Okay, well, we'll send her the link and said,
We will.
she,
Yes, I'll give a shout out to my mom, Maggie Lipchak.
okay, but she always wanted you to follow her steps. So here
Yeah.
you are too. So you grew up as a child. When did you decide you wanted to become a lawyer?
Um, I thought about being a lawyer probably very seriously in high school and certainly in college. I was just really I was interested in the justice system. And interestingly, I was really interested in the criminal justice system. I thought I might be a district attorney or might like to be a prosecutor in that area of the law. But an internship with a domestic violence organization quickly changed my perspective and exposed me to a lot of different needs and a different path. So I actually spent about 9 years as a social worker doing advocacy for survivors of trauma, domestic violence, and sexual assault. I worked for a couple of different wonderful organizations, one in Durham and one in Atlanta. And then the path to law sort of found me again. I was doing a lot of work with my clients, and it just all sort of came back together of, you know what? Why don't I fight for them in the legal system? So I ended up going to law school in Atlanta. I went to a night program down there. So I was working during the day and going at night. And I just was very fortunate that after graduating, moved here to Western North Carolina. And after I passed the bar exam, I got to work at Pisgah Legal Services. And that's been really a wonderful place to blend social work, advocacy, the legal system, and really social justice, which that's really what it is for me, is thinking about these problems that so many people in our community face, and what's possible, what we can do as advocates through the civil legal system.
That's quite a shift, though. I can imagine that you've been a social worker for how many years? How many?
Almost done. Yeah, it was definitely different.
And to have to be doing that full time and then going to school at night, that was kind of a grind. And it's back to when you were a child before you got into school, or as you were going through school. did you always watch like, were you a big fan of like legal programs on the air? Did you always like what was it, The Defenders? I remember a show, Defenders, maybe before your time. But did you watch law shows on
I did
TV?
watch a lot of shows. So I remember being a kid in the 80s watching LA Law.
Okay,
It was
loved it.
very,
Sure.
it's very, I mean, that was, I remember that. I remember, oh gosh, like The Firm and Law and
Right.
Order. I mean, I, all of it.
But
That
you
was
forgot,
fascinating.
but you forgot to mention the show that made perhaps the most profound impact on you was, of course, My Cousin Vinny. You know, that changed. It's just I just watched it again the other day. It was such a marvelous film that just changed your whole thing. And you want to be like Vinny. Great show. So you then, wow, that was perfect. You were at the right place, I guess, at the right time. So you graduated and came right on to working with Pisgah.
Yes, and I started off doing housing law and public benefits law, which is both issues are very very big needs here in the community. I was doing a lot of homelessness prevention work at Pisgah. We really focus on trying to help people remain housed, remain in affordable housing, make sure that they can access their legal rights if they're eligible for subsidized housing programs. Housing, the lack of affordable housing in our community is something that I'm sure you've probably covered on your show. I mean, it's been such an issue here for us in Western North Carolina. And so at Pisgah, we work very hard to try to keep people housed and in housing that they can afford and, to have that stability.
And talk about Pisgah for the benefit of those folks who don't know what the organization is. What's the organization all about?
So Pisgah Legal Services is a civil legal aid advocacy nonprofit organization. We are community-based and our services are completely free. And so we provide access to attorneys for very low income people and families that couldn't otherwise afford one. And for families who were experiencing a crisis that are individuals who are experiencing this crisis in the civil legal system. We were talking about the legal shows before, and, so many people, they recognize the right, oh, you have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford
Right.
one will be appointed for you. And in the criminal system, that's true. That's your right in almost most criminal matters. But on the other side of this justice system that our country has, the civil side, there is not that same complementary right. And so if you are experiencing being evicted from your housing or losing your home to foreclosure, or you can't access medical services because, your benefits are being denied, or you can't get, you need a protective order because you are a survivor of domestic violence, there is no right to have an attorney with you in that process. But often it is access to an attorney that can be the difference to protecting people's rights, helping them to advocate for what they need, and safety from abuse or a child remaining housed.
And the marvelous thing about Pisgah, I think, is the fact that you provide these services for people at no charge to them. Is that correct?
That's right.
How,
Absolutely. Our
how,
services are free.
how can you do that?
Well, we are funded by a variety of different grants, government contracts. We have local grants, county grants and contracts. We have federal grants and contracts. We have different, funding is sort of sliced out in those ways. We also have tremendous support from the community. One of the things that I am always humbled by and grateful for as one of the staff members at Pisgah Legal Services is the money that we are able to raise from the community in order so many people locally support our work. And that's a really big part of what funds us to do this work.
But also, we should mention the fact that lawyers also help you get the program off the ground because, right, they give their services too.
Yes, we have a really wonderful legal community that volunteers at Pisgah and donates their time and their talent. We call, those are pro bono hours that many volunteers donate through taking on cases and helping advise people, and it leverages our ability to serve more and more people. And last year in 2022, we modestly valued all of that time that attorneys provided to help serve our clients at almost, I think, a little bit over $650,000.
Now,
So
how many attorneys do you have providing the volunteer services?
we have
Ballpark.
over 300 volunteer attorneys that work with and support Pisgah Legal Services.
And explain it then. So this pro bono work, they don't have to do that. Is that correct? Or they have to so many hours, but a lot of them put in way beyond the hours they have to read.
So we have a state bar guidance. It's an aspirational goal of 50 hours of pro bono services annually. But as I said, it's not a requirement. And what we find at Pisgah is that, our volunteer attorneys are very generous with their time and their knowledge and their services. And so folks do hundreds of hours for us, some of them. And, we have different opportunities as well. So we're really able to work with where attorneys are. Some are currently practicing, they're working full time, they're giving their time when they have some extra time. We also have many committed retired attorneys, both local retirees as well as folks who move to the area after retiring that spend their retirement time supporting us and working with clients at Pisgah. So it's really wonderful.
How many staffers do you have on, work on a paid basis there?
We have 130 staff now at Pisgah Legal Services. Yeah, we have grown significantly over the years.
I mean, even to fit in the office, that's a lot of people to get that office isn't that big, or it's getting crowded.
Well, I think we're getting crowded, but also, we're across the region of Western North Carolina now. And so we have an office here in Asheville, but we also have offices in Henderson County, up in Burnsville, in Rutherfordton, out in the Plateau, Highlands Cashers area. We have over 11 offices in the region now. I'm not naming all of them, but some of the highlights there. So we're really spread out, and our work is very community based. And so we are serving people across Western North Carolina.
And as you mentioned it, one of the things I don't see are your roller skates, to get between those various offices. You have to get to the various offices from time to time.
I mean, I do, yes.
Yeah.
And, we try to support one another, but we also have staff who are based in those offices full time and available to our clients.
If somebody wants to get help or assistance from Pisgah, what do they do?
Well, you can reach us in a couple of different ways. Our local phone number is 828-253-0406. That's one of the best ways to reach us. We have a team of receptionists who are answering our calls and getting back to people, and we're screening them for our services. People can also apply online. We have an online application. So if that is more convenient or, really any time of day, someone's able to access that, and they can go directly to our website, which is www.pisgahlegal.org. Those are kind of the two main avenues to reach us. And then, of course, we work with people who maybe don't have access to a phone, don't have access to a computer. And so anyone can walk into our offices and we'll take your information and, we'll help you apply for our services.
How about if they don't speak English?
We are able to provide services in the language that a person speaks. We have over 25 bilingual staff who are fluent in both English and Spanish. That tends to be kind of the second most spoken language for our clients. But we also have access to a very professional service where over 300 languages. So if someone comes into our office, we have tools in there to communicate, to determine what language is needed and to serve them in that language.
I guess you prefer that they call or make an appointment as opposed to just walking in, or but you do have a lot of people walk in.
We we do prefer because we get so many phone calls and requests for services on a daily basis that we have to kind of take people as the applications are coming in, and so it is preferable. But again, I just mentioned that as an access point so that people also know that if the only way to reach us is to come to us, that's okay. If that's a barrier, we'll certainly work to reduce that barrier and help somebody apply for our services.
Ballpark in a given year or even last year, how many people did you serve? Do you have a figure or somewhere around?
Sure. Yeah, we have a figure. We collect data, a lot of different data points. We served 21,696 people in 2022.
Okay, and I assume that numbers keeps growing up,
It
going
does.
up.
Yes, so
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if we're over 22,000 people and more. Unfortunately, as I said, our client population is very low income. We're working with families, a family of four. Our income level for services is around $33,000 a year for that household for four people. This is extremely low income. And unfortunately, in Western North Carolina, when we pull the data and the poverty rates, we typically see that there are between 100 and 200,000 people in this region who could income qualify on any given month. And so there's a great need. We see that on a daily basis with the number of calls and applications that are submitted.
I would imagine one of the problems you face is the fact that people still don't know about you. I mean, we're doing this podcast, you do lots of other public speaking gigs and going out into the community. But I guess it's really sad when somebody comes to you and it's too late, or sometimes
Yeah.
I guess you can only help people to a certain point, and at some point in time they're out of luck. It happens.
It certainly happens. I mean, it depends on what the legal issue is, but sometimes the legal case has run its course, and so if you come to us, after you've been evicted and after your appeal rights have all lapsed and there's no more time, then we're really not able to do anything at that point. So we do encourage people. And let me say a few things here. We encourage people to reach out to us as soon as they think they might even have a problem. So for example, if someone got a letter from their landlord and it said, well, if you don't do X, Y, and Z by this date, this is your notice to move or notice to vacate. We would much rather have that person calling us and be able to begin to explain to them like what the process is, what their rights are, maybe give them advice on, here's what you should do, here's how to keep your housing, versus seeing them after things have been filed in court and maybe they're just not going to win that case. So we try to be proactive when we can be, and we try to encourage people to be, if you're not if you don't need our services but know about us, we hope other people will be ambassadors to Pisgah, to spread the word, to offer us as a resource, because you're right, a lot of people don't know about us. And a lot of folks, you hear the word attorney, you hear
Right.
legal services. There's just a lot that comes with that, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard folks say, well, I didn't realize, that your services were free, or I didn't realize you did this. And so it's always, I'm always grateful that, folks like you, Blaine, are calling attention to the work that we do and sharing it broadly in the community, because the odds are that somebody is going to either be listening and realize that Pisgah Legal may be able to help them, or they might know somebody who could benefit from our services, and I hope they'll apply.
Unfortunately for you, I don't think this is the case, that when somebody gets an eviction notice, they don't have a little line at the bottom, if you need help, contact Pisgah Legal. That's not part of the process.
No, I mean, there are not for evictions. Here in Buncombe County, we actually we do monitor like the docket.
Right.
in small claims court, and we try to have attorneys on site as an available resource when we see that there are a lot of evictions pending. In some other places, like for example, Medicaid notices that go out, they will have like a statewide phone number that goes to kind of the one of the statewide legal services providers, and then people will get routed to us potentially, but it can be really difficult, and having just our number locally on different information isn't always possible.
I mean, so wouldn't that be great if you could ever do that? That every time you get a notice, the disclaimer saying you have the right to seek help if you need it or something, but you don't have that. That's not a requirement. They don't have to include that note.
No, I mean, like I said, sometimes we can figure some things out, but it's more the exception, not the rule.
And also another problem, I guess, that people get letters, and if they speak Spanish and the letter's in English, that's already a problem, right? That I guess there's no requirement that it has to be in Spanish or their language.
It all depends on that does depend on whether the program is federal. I mean, there are some requirements, so it's pretty dependent on the situation. But yes, I mean, for the most part, we see a lot of folks who are getting information, and it's maybe not in their primary language, or it's scary, or there's just a lot of information that can be overwhelming. And so, we just, again, I really encourage people to hang on to that written information, keep a file, and reach out.
Even if people come into your office, are there people who speak Spanish who can help them?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We have, I think I'd have to look back exactly, but we have over 25 staff who speak Spanish on our staff, supporting, clients from the beginning, from reaching out to access our services, all the way to attorneys who are bilingual, and legal assistants who are supporting people through their cases.
Well, that's something also, Jackie, that you did several years ago, and I think you folks did a great job with it. But you got involved when Obamacare came into play, and you're still involved in Obamacare?
Yep. So we are going into our 11th year of helping people enroll in Affordable Care Act health insurance coverage. And we actually have a really generous grant from the Dogwood Health Foundation, the Dogwood Health Trust. And they have funded our work both for our ACA enrollment across the region of Western North Carolina, but also work that we had been doing on a very small scale, and they've helped us to really scale that up. And that is VITA, free tax preparation services. And the work that we're doing, both of these programs, it's called the Health and Economic Opportunity Program. And that has given us an opportunity to really tackle two very big issues that we see as really impacting poverty in our region, and that is the uninsured rate. And so we want to help more people get health insurance, quality, affordable healthcare, and use those services. And child poverty. Childhood poverty rates here in Western North Carolina are staggering. And one of the most effective tools at addressing child poverty, it's the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. And under the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, that law that happened during the pandemic, there were some pretty significant changes. There was an increase in the child tax credit. There was an enhanced Earned Income Tax Credit at the federal levels. And these, they are not long-term. They haven't continued at this level, but families in particular who are, those families who are living on $12,000 a year, $15,000 a year, they have not accessed these tax credits yet. And so we're trying to find them. We are out there across the counties here in Western North Carolina doing outreach, building relationships with people, and really working hard to help people who don't traditionally file taxes, aren't required to file them because they're so low income, to understand that there's a real incentive to filing taxes for calendar years 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we've seen some pretty incredible scenarios. We had a single mom with that. I mean, she had a lot of kids. I think she had 6 children. She was living in, I think a 1-bedroom apartment. Her income was incredibly low. And between everything and doing 3 years worth of tax filings and refunds, she walked out with over $40,000.
Wow, that's some story. But you raise a good point here too, that folks should realize that it can be to their advantage. Some people are scared to file taxes, or they don't want to, and they're going to get in trouble. But I guess you only find out if you check it out. And the best way to check it out, or you mentioned your service I wasn't familiar with, contact Pisgah. They can help with that.
We can definitely help with that. So we have a team now of trained tax preparers who, again, this is a completely free service. We will help people file their taxes. We also have 2 tax law attorneys on our staff. We're about to have 3. So when you mentioned sometimes people get nervous when something is a little bit more complicated, we have that ability to, on the legal side of things, work a tax case now. But what's really frustrating and challenging is that the way that some of these laws are designed, they have the best ideas and proven strategies, right? The child tax credit is effective. But the most vulnerable, the folks who really need this, they are just left out of the system. The system doesn't even really acknowledge them, right? Like, because if you don't have to file taxes, then you're not in the IRS's system, then you didn't get the automatic payments that came out, or you don't get the automatic, you don't get any of these things that were pretty easy for people like me, for example. The child tax credit just showed up in my account one day.
Right.
But the folks that I'm working with, where that could be the difference between keeping the electricity on, buying food, they have to proactively do something because they don't have to file taxes. So unless they come out and do it, then they can't get this money that, is available for them and can be, in some instances, really life-changing.
It's almost like going to the dentist. Some people feel going to the dentist. What do you tell somebody who fears going to have their taxes filed? They're going to be tracked, or they're going to be watched. What do you tell them?
I think what we tell them is, often what we talk about at Pisgah Legal Services, for all of our services, they're free, they're confidential, and we are going to sit down and go over the options with somebody. But we're not in a position where they come in to explore their situation and we are going to make them file their taxes. Always, they're going to have the choice and the determination of what to do. We just want them to really understand what the benefits are. And if they feel that there is some risk, we want to be able to explain what that is or isn't, compared to here's what's here's the income you have, here's the number of children here you haven't filed. So you're looking at this as, a refund back. And we really just, again, lead with just compassion and empathy and building trust, that we're not here to tell people what to do, but we are here to make sure that people understand their rights under these laws. And these are laws that can really benefit very low income families. And we really feel it's just critical to be doing this work right now. Congress did not extend the child tax credit. So we are advocating for that, and we'd like to see it continue. But at least right now, while people can still go back and file and claim it, we are going to be there. So, letting people know that it's available to them, and, talking about it everywhere we can so that more people can spread the word.
I should mention one other thing that you do with folks is that if they meet with you, it's all confidential, so that if I share something with you, you're not going to be the ones to report us to or not me, but you're not going to be reporting anybody to IRS or to other agencies. Is that correct?
Oh, I mean, we attorney-client privilege, confidentiality is really, it's an important part of the legal side and services of our work. And absolutely, we're not reporting or sharing information with people without their permission.
And one other group of folks I'll ask you about in terms of immigrants. Do you work with immigrants?
We do. Mhm.
And what kind of services do you provide them?
So we do a lot of work with immigrants. We're actually the only free immigration legal services west of Charlotte. And we do a lot of work with immigrants to help them access lawful work authorizations. We help with DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the process for applying in order to get a work authorization. We help people with those applications. We do a lot of work with immigrants who are survivors of violence and crimes that have access to legal remedies as the survivor of a crime. And so typically that's something called a U visa. We can help with that. We help domestic violence survivors and sexual assault survivors who are also immigrants. We just do a lot of work to support, survivors who want to get independence and away from an abusive partner and to secure safety for those children. And then the lawful work authorizations that can come with that will allow many immigrants to work and to have a job and to be able to afford housing and food and clothing, and sometimes, a lot of times, a pathway to lawful legal status and citizenship.
I guess the key is, Jackie, what I hear you saying is that you don't know about this until you at least check it out, and so I'm going to ask you to recap if folks are listening to this, or if they, more importantly, what you said, I think was on target, if they know somebody who could be helped by Pisgah, even if not them personally, you want them to contact Pisgah. And you mentioned the best way is probably going to the website or to call or both.
Both are
Okay.
good. So the website, would you like me to
If you
repeat
would,
it?
if you would, please.
Yeah, it's www.pisgahlegal.org. And from
And
there,
Pisgah is, spell it.
Pisgah, PISGAHLEGAL.org.
Okay, by the way, I should know, or some people might want to know, Pisgah is what does Pisgah stand for?
The Pisgah Mountains.
Okay, for those who don't know. And you mentioned also the a phone number, if you would, please.
828-253-0406.
Okay. And I can only emphasize what Jackie's been saying. If you want help or need help, and if you qualify or you need to, meet the requirements, Pisgah is the place to go. Or it's almost like you said, it's the only place in town to go for the most part. Is that correct?
We are the largest legal services provider, in this area, and certainly one of the only free legal resources around.
Okay. And what I'm hearing you say, which is kind of cool, it's almost like a one-stop shopping. So I guess probably you get people too come in and they need help in several different areas.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. It's really not, it's actually pretty common that when somebody needs our services, they'll come in for one thing, but we work really hard to be holistic, right? Because one of the things we care about is not just addressing that need and kind of sending someone on their way, but what can we do to really set this person or family up for not needing us again? And in the course of our work, we try to figure out what else is going on. So, if it's an eviction that we're dealing with, but it's really because somebody became ill and they didn't have health insurance, we've got our holistic services and our teams there to think about, well, can we help you with the ACA? Did you file your taxes? Might we be able to help you bring in some income that way? Have you ever applied for subsidized housing? We can help you with an application for that. So lots of different ways that we try to work with people and really address the root causes of poverty and see what we can do to, get them to a place where they don't need to come back to us in the future.
And what's cool is, unfortunately, a lot of folks don't even realize that there's help available. You just have to avail yourself of it. Jackie
Yeah.
Kiger, I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. And also thank you and Pisgah for all the phenomenal work you do. It's just a real resource to the community. Also thank my producer, Cappy Cassetti, and we'll hopefully bump into each other sometime in the near future. Thanks,
Yeah, I
Jackie.
hope so. Thank you, Blaine.
I could be well.